Hi, this is Toby, and in this video, I'll be telling you how to propagate your epiphyllums, as well as discuss some points about epiphyllums and their care, and a bit about their propagation. So let's get started. So first of all, I want to introduce you to what epiphyllums are. An epiphyllum is this genus of epiphytic cacti that originate from southern Mexico all the way into Central America, and they are a very nice group of plants to have because they have very showy flowers. If you can see, I'm gonna put some pictures up now. They have very showy flowers. Now, the natural varieties are usually white, the flowers usually only last for only a night, but the cultivars and hybrids that are commonly available now, the flowers can actually last a few days, and they're very easy to care for. They don't take up too much space, and they're one of the few cacti you can actually prune back to shape. So unlike the desert cacti, these cacti don't need that much sun. Only a few hours of direct sun in the morning is enough, and for the rest of the day, I suggest you keep them in part shade. If you give them too much sun, they can go a bit red, and they do take a bit more water than your desert cacti. I usually water this around 2 or 3 times a week during the summer when they're actively growing, and they don't seem to mind it. In winter, I'll only water around once a month, just very lightly, and I do recommend keeping it above single digits if possible at night, but I've gotten away with single digits at night in terms of temperature for many years, and they still bloom. But anyways, I'm going to show you how to propagate these now. So I did record this section a few days ago, but I just want to explain what I'm doing now. If you're taking cuttings off of your own plant, I recommend taking the cuttings that are either this season's growth that's hard enough or previous season's growth. Now, older growth will still work, although you'll get better results with more fresh growth. You don't want the growth to be so soft because that's not going to really work for you. You want a piece that has matured and has hardened off. So something from this season is all right. And again, you want to make sure your cutting is quite plump because it is going to need a bit of water, and before it roots, it can't really absorb too much water. So you want to make sure your cutting is quite plump. If it isn't that plump, you might have to use the water method, which is just putting the cutting in some water. But anyways, I'll be showing you how to grow them now. So here we have a bunch of epiphyllum cuttings. These are the ones I purchased, and these are the ones from my own plant. Now, if you purchase your epiphyllum cuttings, which if you don't have any epiphyllum, that's the only way you can really get them, or if you purchase a plant that's already rooted, you can just plant them straight away. But I find with epiphyllum cuttings is that you don't want a piece that's too big. So something like this is actually a bit too big for my liking, and I would actually cut it in half. Now, if I show you some of my own cuttings, a piece like this is sufficient. You bury this much in the soil and it will grow. So with cuttings like this, I am going to actually just cut it in half, get something sharp, and these aren't that hard to cut. And all I'm going to do is simply going to cut this in half. Now, with any cactus cutting, you can see the cut is still fresh. You have to wait for it to callus. Now, because it is quite dry these few days and quite windy, I am only going to wait just around a day. It should be enough. Again, with something like this is a bit too big for my liking, so I am going to cut it in half. Like that. And pieces like this are a perfect size to grow. Same with this. That's a bit too long. So again, I'm going to cut it in half. So with cuttings that you can plant, I will plant those in a few days, but because I took these, I think yesterday, I will plant them. I will show you how to actually plant these cuttings. So all you need is a medium-sized pot. You don't need something too big at this point. And I'm going to fill it up with just regular cacti and succulent mix. You don't need super well-drained soil because these plants don't require that little water. They actually require more water than cacti, as said before. So I will fill this up with a bit of soil, a cacti and succulent mix. So when your pot is almost full, you want to get your cutting and stick it in the soil. You want around 2 centimeters, or at least 2 centimeters of the cutting in the soil. And what you're going to do is you're going to fill up the pot to the top. Now you can see I'm planting 2 cuttings in this one pot. It's not going to matter. they can have multiple plants in the same pot. See, I'm just gently putting the soil around the plant just so it stands, and that is done. That is how you propagate it. I'm going to show you another one. You start to fill up your pot and you get your cutting and you want to stick it in the soil, and then you fill the pot back up. Just like that. So I will finish putting up the rest and I will show you. So here they are. I put them in the same conditions as where I grow my other epiphyllums. I also have 3 here that I didn't show you me planting them, but the care is going to be very similar to these. Probably just slightly less water because they don't have roots yet, but they will still get that morning sun and the part shade throughout the day. But when something grows, or actually when I water it tomorrow, I will show you what I'm going to do, and then when something grows, I'll show you an update. So I have planted all the cuttings today. I just sprayed them with the hose. That's how I water my epiphyllums. You see, the soil is saturated. I've planted all of my cuttings and watered them, and I will just give them the regular care that these epiphyllums have, just one watering every few days when the substrate completely dries out. You want to make sure the soil is dried when you water them, and these epiphyllums can use quite a bit of water over the growing season. But again, with these cuttings, I will have to make sure that the soil is pretty much fully dried before I water it, because I don't want to risk rotting it. They should root within a few weeks, and I think within a month I will show you the new growth when it comes out. So here's an update of the epiphyllum cuttings. I think this is the only one where I can spot new growth coming out. You can see right there, there's some new growth coming out. Now this does not mean that it has rooted a lot, it just means it's still alive. It may not actually have rooted that much, so you do have to be patient. One sure sign to see that if the plant has rooted or is if the cuttings become super plump after you water it. This has not become super plump yet, so the roots may only be very small at the moment. You don't want to break the new roots by just moving it around, so you've got to be very careful with it. But give it probably another month or at least 2 weeks, it should be able to root properly. So here is an update of the epiphyllum cuttings. You can see I've got new growth on a lot of them. These two have new growth. This has new growth. I think another one had new growth somewhere, but I don't know which one it was. These aren't epiphyllums, by the way. These are just ripsalis. Other epiphyllums have growth, and again, you want to check for caterpillars and slugs, because you can see they do nip the tips of new growth and it stops growing. Now, ideally, in terms of temperature range for these, because it was quite cold a few weeks ago and they didn't really grow that much, but now it's warmed up, it's grown a lot better. I would say during the day, you'd want to keep them around between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, and at night, preferably above 10, and definitely not freezing, because epiphyllums cannot take the frost, but you do want to keep them above 10 degrees Celsius at least if you're trying to propagate them. But I do recommend around 15 to 18 degrees Celsius. That should be around the best temperature for them to grow. But again, they're not too picky. They do grow. You can see that was the one I was talking about. That one had new growth, and it has firmed up as well, all of these, so they have rooted. And when they grow a bit more, I will show you. So here's another update of the epiphyllum cuttings. You can see at this rate, they will grow quite fast, and different ones will grow at different rates. You can see one of them, I've got pretty much a full segment out already. Some of them are just starting to grow a new segment. Some of them have not grown at all. You can see this one hasn't put a new segment out yet, but this one has. So different growth rates, it's different for each cutting. You just have to be patient, but once it's firm in the pot, that's when you know it's pretty much set root and it will grow. You just gotta wait until the new growth comes out, and at this point you don't need to do anything to it. But after another update, I will just talk a little bit about the care of these plants afterwards, what you should do to your cuttings and how you make your plants a lot fuller, a lot quicker. So one more update and I will show you that. So now I'm going to talk about a bit about the care of your epiphyllums and what to expect and how long they're going to take to flower. But before that, I'm going to show you another update of the cuttings. New growth coming along nicely. You can see so much new growth. So there's new growth. Those two have new growth. The ones that didn't have new growth before, my Epiphyllum guatemalense, these two cuttings I showed you to put together, new growth. Some of the other ones haven't had new growth, but they will come. Again, they do grow at different rates. You can see even some of these cuttings, no new growth yet, but it is plump, so that means it has rooted. And to check if it's plump or not, you can just gently squeeze the plant like that. And if it's plump, you will feel it's quite firm, and if it's soft, it's obviously soft. But I'll quickly talk about what to expect from your plants. Now, a lot of Epiphyllum, they actually produce two types of growth, and I'm just going to quickly explain what they look like. So if we come over here to my Epiphyllum oxypetalum, you can see distinctly there is two different types of growth. I've got new growth that looks like this, which looks kind of like a leaf, which is actually a segment, and again, something's eaten the tip of it. And I do check my plants every night, but sometimes maybe a caterpillar or a slug comes at midnight and I can't really do anything about it. But I do keep my best to try and keep the pests away. But back to this, you can see I have a leaf sort of shape, and I also have these long canes. Now these long canes you can actually prune. You see I pruned it there, and new growth will come out. And some Epiphyllum, I'm not sure if all Epiphyllum will grow those, but I think many will. They do grow differently from the leaf segments. You can see even on this Epiphyllum, I've got a cane there. You can see it's round. It starts out round, and at the end it kind of tapers into what a normal segment would look like. Whereas if it was just a normal segment, you see it starts off thick and it stays this shape. You can see like this, and you'll notice a difference when it grows. Now, if you remember, these two are from the same cutting, which are just cut in half. This is just growing a normal segment, and this is growing what I would call a cane. And the canes do tend to start growing from underground or beneath the soil. You can see this one has emerged from beneath the soil and it's starting to come out, and this will get quite long, whereas the segments won't get as long, but it will get wider. Again, you can see these are just normal segments. They may or may not produce the canes. Another thing I want to talk about is fertilizing. Now, as you know, when I grow my cacti, I usually do not fertilize them, even my Epiphyllums, but before they flower in spring, I sometimes give them a little boost just to help them encourage to develop more flowers. And the fertilizer I use is just an Osmocote fertilizer for cacti and succulents. Now, you could just apply it in this form, or if you're wanting to give your plants a boost straight away, because that is slow release and it only releases a bit every time you water, you can crush it up and sprinkle it on. Now, I think the fertilizer is a bit hygroscopic because it is starting to clump up in here, but if you want to give your plants a lot of nutrients really quickly, you can crush it up, or you just put the little round balls on straight away, and they will last a few months. Again, I usually don't fertilize my plants because the soil I use already have a bit of fertilizer in it, so I don't need to. These cuttings, you don't need to fertilize, they grow quite well. And talking about flowering, if you haven't seen my other video on Epiphyllums from buds to bloom, where all of these guys flowered and produced fruit, make sure to check that out. I will link that in the description below. Now, when do you expect your cutting to flower? I have my Pegasus here. I've only had it for around 2 years and it has flowered, and you can see it's even produced a fruit after I pollinated it. And the fruit is quite plump. Now, I know the plant is looking a bit sad because a lot of energy is going into the fruit, but I know it will still grow. It might not bloom next season because maybe I shouldn't have let it fruit when it's this young, but the plant won't die. So these cuttings, if I grow them well and they do get a decent size, in 2 years they should be able to flower. But if not, certainly within the first 5 years, they will flower for you. And if you want to see what the flowers look like on these, again, you can check my other video out. But I think that's about it. And overwintering, again, I said at the start of the video, you don't want to keep them too cold, ideally above single digits. But again, I've kept them outside here all year round, and the temperatures have gone to around 5 degrees Celsius at night, and even colder sometimes. But strictly no frost. Do not expose these guys to frost because they will suffer. And in winter, you can keep them relatively dry, only water around once a month very lightly, and they will be happy. But I think that's going to be it for this video on how to grow your epiphyllums from cuttings. So I will put a summary of what I talked about in the video in the description below, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I will check the comment sections out and I will answer some of your questions. Again, make sure to give this a go yourself, because I think epiphyllums are very great plants for beginners and even experts. They produce lovely blooms that you can enjoy, and you can actually prune them back to space if you don't have too much space, and they don't need too big of a pot. Again, they're one of the few plants you can actually restrict their roots and they will still grow quite nicely for you. But anyways, thanks for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, or if you have questions about your own plants, you can actually email me, and I will have my email in the description below if you want to send over some photos. But anyways, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.